There's a specific kind of silence that happens after someone throws up in your bathroom sink instead of the toilet, and you're standing there holding their hair back, and neither of you says anything for a solid 2 minutes because you're both waiting for the other person to laugh first. That was me and Cass at 1 in the morning on his 27th birthday. He finally broke it, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, looked at me in the mirror instead of turning around and said, "In my defense, the sink was closer. The toilet is right there, Cass." It felt farther. I remember laughing so hard I had to sit down on the edge of the tub, and he slid down next to me, still holding a fistful of his own hair like he'd forgotten he wasn't supposed to be doing that anymore. That's the kind of night it was. Stupid, ordinary, the kind of night you don't know is about to matter until it already has. I should back up because none of this makes sense unless you know how long I'd already been in it by that point. Not in love in the dramatic way people say it, like it hit them over the head. It was slower than that. It was 6 years of it, actually, which is embarrassing to admit out loud, but I'm telling this whole thing so I might as well be honest about the parts that make me look pathetic too. We met freshman year of college because our assigned dorm rooms were next to each other, and the wall between us was thin enough that I could hear him talking to his mom on the phone every single night at exactly 9. Not fighting, just talking. About his day, about a class, about nothing. I used to lie in bed and listen to the rhythm of his voice through the wall without hearing the actual words, which sounds creepy now that I say it, but at the time it just felt like company. I was homesick and he didn't know it, and his voice was the only part of the day that felt like a routine. We didn't actually become friends until October when the fire alarm went off at 2 in the morning over burnt popcorn, and we ended up standing outside in the cold in our pajamas for 40 minutes because nobody could find the raw. He had on one shoe, just one. I asked him about it and he looked down like he was noticing for the first time and said, "Huh, that was it. That was the whole explanation." And for some reason, that was the funniest thing I'd heard all semester. And by the time they let us back inside, we'd exchanged numbers and he'd told me his middle name, which is Emmanuel, which he hates, which I have used against him exactly 400 times since. We were friends for 2 years before I figured out I was gay, and by the time I figured it out, he was already the person I pictured when I tried to imagine what wanting someone even felt like. That's an awful thing to realize about your best friend. There's no clean way to sit with it. You can't tell him because what if it changes everything, and you can't not tell him because it's already changed everything for you quietly on your side where he can't see it. So I didn't say anything. For 6 years I didn't say anything. I watched him date a girl named Priya for a year and a half and be genuinely, actually happy with her. And I was happy for him too, in the real way, not the movie way where the best friend is secretly seething. I like Priya. She used to bring me coffee when she came over because she said I always looked like I needed it, which fair. When they broke up, it wasn't dramatic, it was just one of those slow endings where two people realize they want different shaped lives. He cried about it exactly once in my car in a parking lot outside a Trader Joe's, and I let him, and I didn't make it about anything else because it wasn't about anything else. It was just him being sad and me being there. We moved in together the year after that. Practical reasons mostly. His lease was up, my roommate was getting married and moving out, and it made sense on paper in the specific way that terrible ideas make sense on paper. I told myself I could do it. Live with someone I was in love with and never say it for years if I had to, because the alternative was not having him in my life at all, and that felt worse than any amount of quiet aching. I got good at it. That's the part nobody warns you about, how good you get at loving someone sideways. I learned his coffee order without ever having to ask again. I learned which nights he needed silence and which nights he needed noise. I learned to sit close enough on the couch that it felt normal but not so close that it felt like anything. I built a whole architecture around not saying the thing, and I lived inside it comfortably enough that most days I almost forgot I was inside a cage of my own design. Almost. So, his 27th birthday. He wanted a small thing, just people from work and a few of our friends at the apartment, nothing fancy. I made a cake that came out lopsided because our oven runs hot on one side, and he ate 2 pieces of it before anyone else got there and told me it was, quote, structurally concerning but emotionally perfect, which is the kind of thing he says that makes it very hard to be a functioning adult around him. The party was fine. Normal. People left around 11, then 11:30, then it was just the two of us and about a third of a bottle of tequila that he'd been slowly working through since 9, in that specific way where you don't notice how much someone's had until they stand up too fast. He wasn't sloppy. I want to be clear about that because I know how this sounds. He got drunk, then confessed everything like it's some cheap excuse, like the alcohol did the talking and none of it counted. It wasn't like that. He was just looser, softer at the edges, the kind of drunk where the filter isn't gone, it's just tired. We were sitting on the kitchen floor for no reason because that's where we ended up after cleaning up half the dishes and giving up on the rest. His back against the cabinet under the sink, mine against the fridge, a triangle of space between us with an empty cake plate in it. "Can I tell you something?" he said, "and you have to promise not to make it weird." "I make everything weird, that's kind of my whole thing." "I'm serious." He wasn't looking at me, he was looking at the cake plate like it owed him money. "Promise." "Okay, I promise." He was quiet for long enough that I thought maybe he'd changed his mind or fallen asleep with his eyes open, which he can genuinely do. It's unsettling. Then he said, "I don't think I've ever actually liked anyone the way I liked Priya." "Okay," I said carefully, because this did not sound like the start of anything I was braced for. "No, I mean, I liked her, I did, but it was never." He made a vague motion with his hand like he was trying to physically grab the right word out of the air. "It was never like how it is with you." Yeah. I remember the exact temperature the room seemed to drop to, not literally. Just everything went very still and very loud at the same time, if that makes sense, the way your own heartbeat gets loud when you're trying not to move. "What do you mean?" I said, and my voice came out flatter than I meant it to because I was terrified of leading him anywhere, terrified of putting words in his mouth that he'd take back in the morning. "I don't know," he laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh, it was the kind people do when they're stalling. "I've been trying to figure out how to say this for okay, honestly, for years. Years, Theo. And every time I get close I chicken out, or I tell myself I'm imagining it, or I get scared that if I say it out loud it'll ruin the only good thing I've got going, so I just don't." "Kaz." "I'm not finished." He finally looked at me, and his eyes were glassy in that drunk way, but there was something underneath it that wasn't drunk at all. "I used to lie awake and think about how unfair it was that the person I actually wanted to talk to at the end of every bad day was you, not Priya, not anyone else, you. And I kept telling myself that's just what best friends are, that's normal, everybody feels that about their best friend, except I don't think everybody wants to kiss their best friend on the kitchen floor at midnight, so." I didn't say anything, I genuinely could not make my mouth work. "See," he said, "this is a weird thing, you promised." "I'm not being weird, I had to stop and actually breathe." "Cass, you're drunk." "I'm aware." "I mean it, you're really drunk, and I don't want this to be a thing you said because it's midnight and there's tequila involved. I don't want to wake up tomorrow and have you not remember or remember and wish you hadn't said it, because I can't." My voice cracked in a way I hated. "I can't do that. I can't hear this and then lose it in the morning. I'd rather not have heard it at all." He looked at me for a second like I'd slapped him, which wasn't what I meant to do, and then something in his face just folded. "You think I don't mean it?" "I think you might mean it right now." "I've meant it for 4 years." His voice went quiet, almost angry, but not at me, at himself, I think. "I've meant it every single day since the day you moved your stuff into this apartment and I stood in the hallway watching you carry a box labeled kitchen shit and thought, oh no, this is going to be a problem, and it has been. It has been a problem every day since. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I didn't know what to do with my face. 6 years of practicing sideways loving, and none of it had prepared me for him actually saying it, out loud in our kitchen with cake crumbs on the floor between us. "I need you to sleep," I said finally, and I hated myself for saying it, but I meant it. "Please, just sleep, and if you still feel this way tomorrow when you're not, when it's just you, no tequila, nothing to blame it on, then we can talk, really talk, I promise, but not tonight." He didn't fight me on it, which surprised me. He just nodded slow and let me help him up off the floor, and he was quiet the whole walk down the hallway except for one thing right before I closed his door, when he caught my wrist and said, "I'm going to remember this. I want you to know that. I'm not going to wake up and pretend I don't remember." "Okay," I said, "then we'll talk tomorrow." "Promise." "I promise." He let go of my wrist. I closed the door. And then I stood in the hallway of our apartment for probably 5 full minutes just breathing, because I had spent 6 years building a very careful, very sturdy wall around a thing I never let myself want out loud, and he had just knocked half of it down without even standing up. I didn't sleep. I want to be honest about that too. This isn't the part where I tell you I lay there calm and hopeful. I lay there terrified. Because there's a version of hope that's worse than none at all, and that's the kind where you've wanted something for so long that you've forgotten how to trust it when it's finally in front of you. I kept running through everything he said, checking it for cracks, looking for the part where it would turn out to be nothing, because nothing felt safer than something that might disappear by morning. He didn't come out of his room until almost noon. I'd made coffee 3 times by then, drank none of it, just kept making more because my hands needed something to do. When he finally shuffled into the kitchen, hair a disaster, wearing yesterday's shirt inside out, he stopped in the doorway and just looked at me for a second. "Okay," he said, "so I remember." "Yes." "All of it, unfortunately." He rubbed his face with both hands, including the part where I called you a problem like some kind of villain in a movie about myself. "You did say that." "God." He sat down across from me at the table, slow, like his body hurt in a way that had nothing to do with the hangover. "Okay, I need you to know I meant every word, and I also need you to know I'm mortified, and both of those things are happening to me at the same time right now, so bear with me." I slid a cup of coffee across the table to him. My hand was shaking a little. I don't think he noticed, or if he did, he didn't say. "Why now?" I said. "Why, you've had 4 years apparently." He wrapped both hands around the mug like he needed the warmth for something other than the coffee. "Because it was my birthday, and I looked around the room at everyone who came, and every single person I actually wanted to talk to all night was already there, standing next to the cake, and I thought, I'm 27 years old and I'm still doing the thing where I don't say what I actually feel, and one day I'm going to turn around and you're going to have moved on, met someone, and I'm going to have spent my whole life being scared of one conversation." "So the tequila just—" "The tequila didn't make me feel it," he said, cutting in, quiet but sure. "It just made me tired of not saying it." I didn't know what to say to that, so for a second I just looked at him, really looked, in a way I'd trained myself not to do for 6 years because looking too long felt dangerous. He looked tired, scared even underneath the deadpan, not like someone performing a confession, like someone who'd been carrying something heavy for a long time and had finally, clumsily put it down. "I have to tell you something too," I said, "and it's going to sound insane given the timeline, but I've known I was into guys since sophomore year and you were—" I stopped, made myself keep going. "You were the reason I figured it out, not because anything happened, just because I couldn't stop thinking about you and eventually I had to stop pretending that meant nothing." He went very still. "Sophomore year." "Sophomore year. Theo. That's 5 years." "I know. You've had 5 years and you never—" "You were with Priya for most of it," I said. "And before that you'd never given me any reason to think, I mean, why would I risk it? Why would I say something and lose the only version of you I got to have for a version that might not exist?" He laughed, but it came out rough, almost like it hurt. "We built this whole apartment, we built years, both of us just sitting on it." "Both of us," I agreed. He was quiet for a second, turning the mug slowly on the table, not drinking from it. "So what now?" I thought about it. I really did think about it because I didn't want to say something just to fill the silence, not after everything it took to get here. "Now," I said, "I think we should actually try, not because it's your birthday and not because there's a bottle of tequila involved, sober, in daylight, on a random Tuesday afterward. I want to know it's real when nothing's making it easy." "That's annoyingly reasonable of you. I contain multitudes." He almost smiled at that, the real kind, not the stalling kind from the night before. "Can I ask you something, and you have to actually answer, none of your deflecting." "Okay. If I hadn't gotten drunk last night, if none of this had happened, do you think you would have ever said anything?" I had to sit with that one because the honest answer wasn't flattering. "Probably not," I admitted. "I think I would have kept doing exactly what I'd been doing, getting good at loving you quietly, telling myself that was enough because the alternative felt too big to risk." "That's kind of sad, Theo." "It is," I said, "I know." "Well," he reached across the table slowly like he was giving me time to pull away if I wanted to, and I didn't, and his hand found mine on the wood surface between the 2 coffee cups. "I'm glad I got drunk then." "I'm glad you got drunk and told the truth instead of throwing up on my rug, is what I'm glad about. That was one time. It was memorable." We sat there a while after that, not saying much, just his hand over mine on the table, both of us a little stunned, like we'd survived something instead of started something, which I guess in a way we had. 6 years of careful distance, undone in one messy night and one honest morning. It wasn't a clean ending, if I'm being fully truthful with you. It wasn't the kind of thing where everything after that point was easy. He had to figure out how to tell his mom, the one he used to call every night at 9, and that took months and it was hard, and there were a few phone calls where I sat in the next room and just listened to him breathe through it. the same way I used to listen to his voice through a dorm wall years before any of this started. There were awkward weeks where neither of us knew how to just be normal with each other because we'd spent so long being careful, and careful doesn't just switch off because someone said the truth out loud one time. But I remember, a few months later, coming home late from work and finding him asleep on the couch with the TV still on and one shoe off, exactly like the night we met. And I stood in the doorway for a second just looking at him before I went to wake him up. And I thought, some people spend their whole lives waiting for the version of someone that's easy. I got the version that took 6 years, one bad tequila decision, and a kitchen floor covered in cake crumbs. And somehow, that's the version I wouldn't trade for anything. I still think about that sometimes, how close we both came to never saying it. How easy it would have been to keep living sideways forever, both of us quietly certain the other one didn't feel it back. It makes me wonder how many people are out there right now, in some kitchen or some hallway or some parked car, sitting on the exact same thing, too scared to put it down. If you're one of them, I don't know, maybe don't wait for the tequila.